Okay, so uh, where do we come from? It's a question, right, that I think has captivated humanity since, well, since we first started looking up at the stars, probably, right?
Yeah, it's a question, that's kind of baked into our DNA. I mean, to try and understand, like, why are we here?
Mm.
How did we get here?
And the sources you've given me for this deep dive frame this question as a debate, really, between three different perspectives: science, religion, and philosophy on, well, our origins.
It's like a clash of the titans.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and what's really fascinating, I think, is how each perspective approaches this question from, like a completely different angle.
Yeah, totally. It's not just like, the nuts and bolts, like how we got here, but it's the, WHY. What does it all mean?
Exactly.
Mm.
So let's start, in the science corner. The sources kind of spell out this scientific consensus, right?
Mm.
So modern humans, Homo sapiens, we first appeared in Africa roughly 300,000 years ago.
Yeah, we give or take.
Right. And it's not like, poof, suddenly we were just here.
Right.
Right. It was the result of millions of years of evolution.
Right, it's a process.
Exactly. It's a process. And that story is told through, like, fossil discoveries, right?
Yeah.
Through, studying our DNA.
Our genes tell a story,
They do.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's amazing. You think about it. You can trace your ancestry back millions of years,
Yeah.
literally through your genes,
Yeah.
revealing this connection to every living thing on Earth.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It is wild.
Okay.
It's mind-blowing, really, if you think about it too much.
Well, and I think that's kind of what's at the heart of, the appeal of this question of, where do we come from, right? Is it just, it's so mind-blowing.
Right. It's like almost too big to wrap your head around sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, you mentioned fossils, and I have to bring up, like, one of the most famous fossil discoveries, right, Lucy?
Oh, of course,
Right.
Lucy.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3.2 million-year-old skeleton.
Discovered in Ethiopia, right?
Mm.
I mean, I remember learning about this in school, and Lucy's skeletal features, they really help scientists kind of understand that transition, from our, like, ape-like ancestors to, these early humans.
Yeah, it's a really important piece of the puzzle, like filling in those gaps in our understanding of how we evolved,
It's such a tangible,
Yeah.
like, piece of evidence,
Yeah.
It's like, wow, there it is.
Right.
Okay, so that's science. But now let's flip the script, right? Let's, look at how religion approaches this question.
Okay.
And, the sources focus on the Christian viewpoint as presented in Genesis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's proposed that humans are a divine creation. We were made in God's image.
Right.
So it's a lot about, like, the physical process of how we began, right? It's more
Yeah.
about understanding our place within, a divine plan.
It's about meaning and purpose.
Right, exactly.
It's like this suggestion that your existence has meaning, It's, like part of this larger cosmic order.
Right, like this transcendental framework that goes beyond, the physical world, right? So
Yeah.
it's like science is giving us the how, right?
Mm-hmm.
And religion's exploring the why.
And the who, too.
Right. Yeah, the who, exactly.
Like, who are we in relation to this divine creator?
Right. Which, kind of brings us to this third perspective, the philosophical perspective.
Yeah.
So how does philosophy tackle this age-old question of where we come from?
Well, philosophy really takes a deep dive, really a deep dive into, the existential questions about what it means to be human.
Right, it's getting into those deeper questions.
Right. It grapples with questions like what does it mean to be human? What is our purpose, if any, in this vast, seemingly indifferent universe?
So not just how did we get here, but, what are we doing here?
Exactly. And it really encourages us, I think, to look beyond just the physical and kind of, ponder the implications of our existence.
I think it's so interesting. I mean, it adds a whole other layer to this whole discussion about where we come from.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of this discussion, this debate between these three perspectives, the sources highlight some thought-provoking questions that arise when these perspectives collide,
Yeah.
kind of bump up against each other.
Yeah, the sparks really fly.
Yeah, they do.
It gets pretty heated,
Yeah. So, for example, religion kind of challenges science, asking, like,
Mhm.
how can evolution really explain uniquely human traits like, consciousness and morality?
Yeah, those are big questions, right?
Right.
Like how do we account for the, emergence of self-awareness, the development of moral codes,
Yeah.
How do we square that with like a purely evolutionary context?
Right. But then, science throws the question back at religion and
Mhm.
says, well, how does the creation story reconcile with the fossil record, right?
Yeah.
And all of the evidence pointing towards, this long evolutionary
It's
process.
real back and forth, you know?
It is. It's like a volleyball
It's
match.
like, oh, yeah, we'll take this. And how
Right.
about that?
Exactly.
What are you going to do with this?
And of course, philosophy, right, doesn't let either side off the hook.
No, no.
You know, they're asking, like, can we really grasp our origins without considering the purpose of our existence? It's like philosophy is like stepping in and being like, hold on, everybody. The why matters just as much as the how.
It's like the referee, you know?
Exactly. Blowing the whistle like time out, time out, time out.
Yeah, let's think about this for a second.
Yeah, let's consider all the angles here. So,
Yeah.
after examining all these different viewpoints and like their back and forth, what are some key takeaways that you get from this whole debate?
Well, I think like science concludes that while the scientific method is like this really powerful lens for understanding our past, it might not fully address those like deeper existential questions,
Okay, yeah.
right?
So it might leave us with more questions than answers in some ways.
Maybe, yeah. And then I think religion, emphasizes that faith provides this framework, right, for understanding both our origin and our purpose within, like a larger divinely ordained reality.
Okay, so it's like two very different approaches.
Very, very different.
Right. And each, with its own strengths and limitations.
Definitely.
So where does that leave philosophy in all of this?
Well, I think, philosophy proposes that, like, integrating scientific knowledge and faith is essential for, like, a really comprehensive understanding of who we are and where we're going.
It's like it's trying to bring them all together in a way.
Yeah, kind of, right. Like, you need both of these things to really wrap your head around, the full all question.
It reminds us, that this question of human origins, it's not simple. It's multifaceted.
It's complicated.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, like we are.
And it requires us to consider, both the tangible and the intangible.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I think what's really striking about this whole deep dive is that, like, figuring out where humans come from, it goes way beyond just our physical beginnings. It delves into, like, the core of what it means to be human.
Absolutely. It makes you think about, your place in the universe, your purpose, the very nature of existence. It's pretty heavy stuff.
It is heavy stuff. Makes you wonder, like, if we could definitively answer where we come from, like scientifically, religiously, philosophically, would that truly satisfy our curiosity about, like, who we are? It's something to think about, isn't it?
Definitely gives you something to chew on.